right, G. You
Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We are here live for episode 10 of Let Your Words Count. My name is Gary Gant here with Ethan Merriweather.
Yes, sir.
You guys know our format, right? We're looking at different words, how they're applied and used in everyday life, and especially how we understand those words to mean, what we understand them to mean, how we're using them. Are we carrying positive or negative energy with those words? Are we applying them the right way? Are they being misunderstood, or can we take one that has some kind of negative association and move it into the positive? But we like to kind of explore words, in this way to kind of look around and see, do we have the right understanding? Are we using things correctly? All right. So what we always do for this, and again, remember, like, share, comment, subscribe. Trying to help the channel grow as we're trying to do this to help people. We look at feedback from the audience, right? So if you guys have suggestions and other words we could be using, words you want us to dive into, something maybe we didn't cover in a past word that you'd like to see us go deeper on, or, a lot of times we'll kind of get into these ancillary discussions where we kind of branch off into another kind of related word. So we listen to your feedback, and some of the episodes we've already done have been from audience feedback, so we encourage you to interact with us, and we will respond and shout you out once we do a word that you've recommended. So today's word is transparency. Transparency. The definition that we have for transparency, and this is an important comment that, and we'll look at the etymology here in a little bit. Maybe start with the etymology, because that etymology kind of sets the real definition, and then we kind of get into how it applies to people after that. So,
All right, sure. So the etymology, the history and the origins, the word transparency comes from the Latin word transbarrier. Hopefully I
transparrier or something.
Barrier.
Something
Hopefully I sounded that out right, pronounced the word right. Meaning to shine through, okay? Derived from trans meaning through, and parere, to appear. So parere actually means to appear.
So letting light appear through something.
Correct. So originally, it referred to physical objects that allowed light to pass through. But over time, it became a metaphor for openness and clarity.
Awesome. So that's the context we're going to be talking about it in terms of today, not as it relates to being able to see through objects or seeing light through a physical object. We're going to be talking about it in the metaphorical sense as it relates to people and people's communication and relationships with each other. The definition we're looking at here, transparency in that metaphorical sense for people, refers to the quality of being open, honest, and straightforward in communication, often involving clarity and the absence of hidden agendas. So again, transparency refers to the quality of being open, honest, and straightforward in communication, often involving clarity and the absence of hidden agendas. So we see how the base, or how the etymology of the word, how the original usage of it kind of fuels this metaphorical usage as it applies to people in our communication. If I can see through an object, it's nothing hidden from me. I can see what's on the other side of it. And, again, as that relates to a person, we're not going to obviously be physically transparent, but my intentions are on open display. And again, if I'm not hiding anything, and this is going to, I think, branch off into, like, we kind of sometimes tend to branch off into other topics that are kind of loosely related. But it kind of does branch into this topic of boundaries a little bit, because we're all going to carry secrets or things that we kind of think or hold inside. Maybe we don't want to say, right? And it doesn't mean you have to divulge all your secrets and go around telling everybody everything that comes to your mind without a filter. So yes, there is a matter of boundaries there in personal relationships where, we have to figure out what's a comfortable boundary where somebody can be transparent without oversharing or compromising their own safety, security, stability kind of things, whatever. So there's that aspect of it, right? We can have some kind of things we keep to ourselves without doing damage. But I think this becomes a more interesting topic, if I can say it like that, when we look at agendas as they apply to, like, government, business, law, or some kind of power structure. if there is an entity or a group or corporation that can make decisions that may affect other people, potentially other people negatively, that's when transparency becomes important. That's when it becomes important to expose what agendas are, what priorities are. And, when you find people not willing to do that, it's usually because they know that what their intentions are, what their agendas may be, is maybe less important than what they're compromising. Like a company that chooses to chase and prioritize profits over the safety of people, that's generally considered a negative, a bad thing, right? So if that company kind of masks its intent or its intentions and its agendas and business goals, that it knows we're going to be able to get, or maybe we'll save a couple $1 billion by, instead of trying to recycle these materials and properly dispose of these things, we dump it into the river instead, right? So it might save a company money, but it's going to compromise people on the other end. So that's where that transparency becomes important when you're talking about a decision that can affect other people, not so much your own personal boundaries and relationships. But what are your thoughts, E?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head on many things. I think it's like it really goes back to the intentions as well,
Absolutely.
right? The word intentions, right? So if I take it personal, from a personal, because you took it to a very interesting perspective at a large company base approach,
Right.
From
Right.
government laws, policies, and different things like that.
For sure.
What I would like to do to make it a little bit in such a way more personal is the transparency that what is it that you would like to become within the process, right? Is it for one thing, as you were talking about, is the honest, the open, and the being straightforward. Why are those things so hard to do? Why is transparency so hard to do? Is it something that you feel that you have to protect? Is it from a personal level, right? You ever heard the saying when people say, "I can see right through him"?
Yes.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Would that be considered a form of transparency from a negative to a positive?
Absolutely.
So, but
because it says you're hiding something, but I understand. I can see what you're hiding. What you're trying to mask from me, I can still see it. Right?
Yeah. And that's with those intentions. Why are you doing that? But I think that we need to use the spin element to say, you're saying that I can see right through you, but I'm gonna use that word to say I have nothing to hide. You know, instead of using it from that negative impact, let's look at it from a positive standpoint where you know me, I'm being honest, I'm being open and straightforward. The question is, how do we get to that point to being straightforward?
Awesome.
I'll let you go ahead.
No, I wasn't. I'm writing down notes of what you were saying, man.
So from a personal standpoint, like, okay, is a couple of trains of thought that we have right here. From there's not much you can do. It is something that you can do. I mean, when it comes to laws and policies and whatnot, right? Very, very minimal, very, very small, especially when it comes to a company standpoint, right? Your company is going to initiate and implement laws and rules and policies and different things like that, and regulations and different things like that, in order to control the amount of information that they made that's probably obscured.
Sure.
You just said that earlier, and it had me thinking, like, what? That means that in some regard, what is the worker to the overall factor of the company in its entirety, that they don't want to share information? Are you trying to protect us?
Right.
And that's probably not the route that I want to. And I think you said enough from that, you know. And if you want to talk a little bit more about that from a larger standpoint, that I'll let you have that.
Yeah.
But when you talk about from a personal standpoint, I think that that's something that I can work with.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like the openness, the honesty and being straightforward. I think how come being straightforward is a hard thing to do?
It's an awesome question.
You know.
That's a great question.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I'm pondering on right now as we talk.
So, and I think as I think about that, right? Why is when transparency is hard? Why is it hard? Because I don't think it has to be.
Yeah.
Right? It can be a difficult thing. It could be an uncomfortable thing. It's exposing yourself to a degree. It's making you vulnerable in some way, right? So yeah, it can be an uncomfortable thing. But when we ask why would it be uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes uncomfortable, I think, because sometimes it can reveal an unhealthy amount of selfishness. Right? I think it becomes uncomfortable when being transparent shows how aggressively you're chasing after something for yourself. And again, I think we should clarify, right? Every entity has the right to protect itself and to pursue things in its own best interest. Whether we're talking about a company, whether we're talking about a person, everybody should have the ability and the right to freely chase after things that's going to benefit them, right? Every company does that. Every person does that to some degree. When you sleep, right, your body needs sleep. When you eat, when you go to a job to make money, all these things, right, they're all self-serving in a way, but it's okay, right? Because generally speaking, doing those things should not harm others. It's okay to sometimes turn your attention inward and focus on the things that you need. So that should be expected and it should be allowed to some degree. I think it becomes uncomfortable when you're pursuing these self-serving things to an extreme degree, or it's going to be, to a degree that can hurt other people. Like I'm gonna, there's $100 sitting on the table, and maybe I know that you're short on money or something else like that, and instead of letting you get to it, maybe I already have $1,000 and I'm comfortable and no bills are due. But I see that money, I'm like, oh, Ethan and C, I'm going to snatch it and grab it, knowing you might have a need, but my own selfishness and my own greed is going to say, I'm going to try to see if I can get that before he notices it, before he sees it. Not being transparent, right? Knowing there's a need, but prioritizing mine instead of yours. People are not going to be transparent when it's going to show that you are overly or exceedingly selfish and chasing after your own good at the expense of somebody else. That's when I think it becomes difficult, because again, it's reasonable for every entity, every person, business, whatever, to pursue their own self-interest in some way. But it's just when it gets to be extreme, or when it gets to be harmful to other people, that's when you start seeing people that are willing to be dishonest about it start to kind of mask their intent. And that thing that you said, when somebody says, I can see right through you, to me, the goal is that nobody needs to say that to me. The goal should be, I can be open enough, and that if I'm going to do things that are self-attentive, that they're not to the point that it's going to compromise or harm somebody else.
Yes.
When that happens, because sometimes just in the difficulty of life, maybe we face situations where we got to choose. If I do this, it's going to hurt this other person, but we got to kind of talk through, and that's when it's good to be, again, transparent, to let people that are maybe going to be affected have some kind of conversation and discuss, how do we do this? Transparency builds accountability and it builds trust.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm not going to be transparent, people are going to start thinking you're sneaky, you're underhanded, you're deceptive, you're all these things, and they're not going to trust you. So it depends on, again, what kind of relationship are you looking for with people? What kind of standing are you looking for your business? Do you want to be trustworthy and dependable and have accountability, or do you want to mask your intent and do things underhanded?
That's
right?
Interesting. So, when you were talking, when you were talking about trust,
Yeah.
like building up that trust, the question that I have is transparency. When can you recognize that transparency, hopefully I say it right, is not working? And is it not that transparency is not working? It's because someone is using a transparency or some entity outside of the person that is operating in transparency is going to use that transparency against them.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Okay.
Excellent question.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, because so you can think about that in terms of IP and intellectual property within a company.
Correct.
Right? A company may I've discovered some new way to refine oil, right? My business has. We've been testing, we've been, having our scientists and our engineers looking at something. We've discovered some new way to refine oil. You don't want to go and, as soon as you figure that out, go and blast it out to the streets, right? Companies, when they have IP, they go through the patent process to say, hey, I'm the first one that discovered this, because their competitors, if they do the same thing, they're going to realize some other gains as well. So when you're in business and you have this kind of natural competition, that's when maybe you're gonna keep some things close to the vest, because it means a business advantage, right? When you're in a market and people, that's the difference though. When people have agreed to go into a market to compete against one another, right? It's okay if I keep some secrets and some things close to myself, because we're in competition, right? But a company should not be in competition with people. You should, a plant that's, smack down in the middle of some neighborhood is not in competition with those people in that area. So when you start doing things that are underhanded and you start disposing of waste in the ground and in the water supply, that's going to affect the people that live nearby. That's something different, right? That's being untrustworthy. That's being deceptive, and we can argue evil or negative. You're not looking at, I'm keeping a secret close to the vest because I'm in competition and it's going to benefit me in business. You're looking at, I'm doing something that's going to, again, harm people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If I'm competing with another business and I do some harm to them by winning, that person has agreed to get into that competition with me. That's okay. You know what I mean? I think that's the difference in my mind.
So, and that's interesting, because I was actually thinking about what are the strengths of transparency and what are the weaknesses of transparency in that regard. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that I think we all would have to, a person that, okay, let's take a step back, because I think every word can be utilized from a standpoint of levels. Every word that we use.
Sure.
And the levels will be immaturity versus maturity. You can look at a word from an immature standpoint, and when you don't really get the full gist and the defining moment of that word, versus you're just blurting the word out just because it sounds good.
Right.
That's an immature way of looking at a word if you don't really understand like what the results were going to be of that word.
Sure.
And so what you're saying to me, in my mind, once we take this transparency and we really see the benefit, the benefits of it, even though I know that something can take advantage of the good of the transparency that I'm displaying, or I'm working out, the openness that I have, I'm being straightforward with you. You can take advantage of that. But I have to realize that someone is trying to take advantage of that.
Very good.
And even from even when it comes to a company standpoint, when you have that IP, when you have that intellectual property that that you got to hold on to, that is the proper transparency, where that's where you how can I say it? I'm trying to say that's where transparency is
permissible.
There you
it's
go.
Understandable.
There you go.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, it's the same thing, right? Because if you're in competition with another company, they're looking to harm you. They're looking to take more market share than what you have. That's the nature of that business. You all have both willingly entered into that situation and that kind of agreement. So it's expected. I'm going to do things and try to take advantage and gain as much as I can when I can. When you start dealing with people, it becomes different, right? So that transparency, right? It's openness, it's honesty, it's sharing of agendas and intentions and being clear on those things. The time that becomes questionable is, again, am I going over some boundary to make myself uncomfortable or expose myself more than what's needed, right? Or in my transparency, am I going to be giving up information that allows somebody else to use that information against me or to bring harm to me? And that's when, it becomes acceptable or understandable to kind of maybe have, again, some boundaries, some barriers up, and say, I'm not going to be transparent in this case because sharing of this information will allow somebody else to use it against me. Now, even that, right? We talked about all, kind of gradients and all these things. There's conditions, there's levels to it, right?
Yes.
Think about that in terms of a person that's committed a crime, right? You have the right to remain silent. When I start speaking and I've admitted to a crime that I've committed, or
Very
things that I say start
Very
to
good.
make it clear to the inspector or the person that's interviewing me or the district attorney that I've committed some crime, they're going to use that information against me, right?
Yeah.
Now, I've done something wrong. Okay, now if I start confessing that I've done these things wrong, the people that are there to serve justice are going to use that information against me,
Yeah.
right? So that's where kind of it depends on the situation, right? It's a better moral or ethical decision to say I'm going to go in and confess and do whatever for your part. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's going to be people are going to use that against you and use it to harm you.
So this is a question I want to ask the audience, and when whoever sees this, or if you are interested in commenting, please do.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions is when you think of transparency, do you feel empowered or vulnerable? Share your thoughts.
Interesting.
I'll be very, very interested to see what is your perspective or your worldview of transparency. And another thing is, are you currently operating in transparency? And I think that the reason why we want to talk about these words a little bit more is so we can apply it in our day-to-day lives.
Sure.
That's the whole point. So we can be strengthened
Right.
with the not only the word, but the definition, the meaning, and understand the origin of that word, where it come from, so we can have a strong fortification in the knowledge of that word and how we are supposed to be applied and utilized.
Awesome.
Okay.
Love it.
You have anything else?
I'm all set, bro.
Yeah. So as far as the key takeaways, I think that there's it's so much you can take with this.
Sure.
Number one thing that I see is the openness. If you look at the openness, let me take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
The original part of the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the original part of the word, it actually doesn't mean the way we use it today.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that's okay.
Right.
Right? That's fine. But now that we use it in the confines of this society now, it's about being straightforward, open, right? And honest. I think that is a very, very important key for us to understand about transparency, and it's not a negative thing.
Right.
It's actually a positive thing.
Right.
And we have to recognize when someone would take advantage of your transparency.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what I think, and definitely I'll let you talk about from the business side, but that's my thoughts that I have. But what do you have?
I think it's both, right? Like you said, it's important to look at, we're talking about the metaphorical usage of it and not the literal, right? It's
Correct.
not literally seeing through somebody, right? But it's that I'm making my intentions known. But again, I think it comes back to, the pluses of it are being open, honest, building trust, building accountability, and making sure that, there's no intent or allowance for harm of other people in the decision that you make. That's when it's a good thing, when you are fully transparent and you allow people to kind of act as a check and balance to you to make sure that you're not doing anything that's harmful. And if somebody is hiding an agenda, again, if you're in competition, if you're talking about business, then you should expect to have some amount of secrecy in order to kind of have your business advantage. If you come up with an idea, you have the rights to use that idea in a way and get paid for it in business. But doesn't even really have to be a fine line, but make sure that we're talking about something that's going to be like a business advantage versus something that's going to save you money at the expense of someone else. Like,
Yes.
I don't have to recycle this or, properly dispose of this because I can dump it and it's just going to affect the population here. I don't live by here. I don't care. The board agrees, right? Because we're saving money. That's the kind of thing where transparency is bad, and it should be made available and known to people. And people that make that decision shouldn't be allowed to make decisions like that anymore in the future, right? So again, it's this, the business side of it, I think, is a lot like the people side. Just be careful not to harm anybody else. And if you have no intentions to harm anybody else, there's no need to be secret. That's why when people start being secretive like that and not in a competition kind of sense, somebody's thinking like, I see through you.
Yeah.
I see that you're allowing or you're intending for some kind of harm to come to somebody else or for you to take advantage, and you're not being open and honest about your intentions.
Yeah,
Right.
that's awesome.
Yep.
I know we're trying to exit this.
Go ahead, bro. You got another thought. Go ahead.
No, I started thinking about like from because you talked about politics, about companies.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do is talk about religion,
Okay.
and I think that are we being open? Are we being straightforward with what we believe?
Right. Right.
You know, and I think sometimes we say we being transparent with our beliefs, but there's this little, you know, there's an interesting phenomenon to me that happens in the confines of transparency. That there's something, I don't want to say secretive, maybe that's the wrong word. You know what I mean? Because like you're saying, it's
Dealing with vulnerability, right? You're exposing something.
and I'm being careful with that, right? Because we know that there's multiple religions out there. There's it's multiple beliefs and multiple doctrines out there or whatever.
Sure.
You know, but my thing is what are you becoming in that process of transparency? You know, like I'm looking at it from are you open? You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah. So
I do.
when we being honest, what are you being honest about? You being straightforward. Excuse me. What are you being straightforward about? Do you really understand? Like I look at Jesus and I say to myself, like, was Jesus transparent with his beliefs? I challenge myself with that question in order for me to get a grasp of how I will want to operate concerning that man. You see what I'm saying? I really believe that this man was very transparent, right? He was open. Actually, let me take a step back. I don't think he was at first because he knew that he was dealing with very, very immature people.
Great point.
You know, the disciples were very immature at that time.
Go forth and don't tell anybody what you've seen here. Yep.
Go ahead, bro.
No. I'm just supporting what you said.
So when you look at the transparency part, I think that there's a valuable protection that a person like the Lord Jesus that had a knowledge of where he was going had to withhold certain information for protection. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And I think that's
deep, bro.
That's wise.
That's deep.
You know what I'm saying? Like the transparency aspect, he had to. It actually goes back to the original. If I could use it, to the original understanding of transparency, it talks about where the light pierces through.
Yes.
So let's go. I'm gonna go back there real quick.
Yeah.
And it says this. It says, originally it referred to physical objects that allowed light to pass through. And so how I'm looking at it from this standpoint is Jesus wasn't able to reveal a lot of the things to an immature mind.
At first.
Yes.
At first. Yes.
But if you notice, especially in the book of John, once he got later on in the chapters, he started revealing more and more to them. I must go away, just like you said, but there you cannot come. You know, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me.
Right.
And that right there is almost like a segue to open the door for further things. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And many other things. And if anybody else have any thoughts on that, I just threw that out there. You have a thought? Go ahead, bro.
I mean, so first, to build on what you're saying, another thing I think shows a master level of wisdom on his part is giving them information. He would say, like, you know, I'm saying some things in dark sayings and parables, and it doesn't appear plain to you right now, but one day you'll understand.
Yes.
So I admire the openness of coding information in a way that you have to reach a certain level of maturity and understanding in order for this to make sense to you. I'm giving you the information. I'm being straightforward and honest. I'm telling you, but I'm telling you in this kind of dark saying, parable kind of way where you're not going to get it today. But 4 or 5 years from now, 10, 20 years from now, you're going to look back on this conversation and you will understand that. And so that's master level wisdom in still divulging the information, but trying to do it in a way where you're protecting the user to some degree. But I don't
Yes.
think that
I
he
like that.
he didn't withhold truth. Maybe there were some things where, for his own safety and for the sake of him completing the things he had to do in his ministry, he withheld some things. But I think he gave the important message and parts of what he had to give to people. Now, I'm going to try not to. You brought up a good point, and you know the conversations you and I have had in private. I'm not going to dive into all that stuff, right? But the transparency aspect of it is very important. I was not able to grow spiritually myself until I was honest about a lot of things, and the way we're expected to, the way we're expected to say things, the way we're expected to give reports and progress and things like that, I had to first confront that I wasn't being honest about those things when I was saying them. I was saying them because they were expected, and it wasn't what I really felt in a lot of situations.
Okay.
Transparency for me was uncomfortable because it made me admit that the things that we're told to say don't feel real to me, and I was not being honest about it, and I had to step away to really reflect within myself what it took for me to be honest and to be transparent, because it bothered me that I felt like I was being dishonest, saying things that I did not really feel and did not really agree with. And I'm not going to get into all the details on there. People who know about my YouTube channel, I talk about that stuff and about what that journey of honesty was for me. But you also said another very important aspect of it is, what are you becoming?
Yeah.
So the transparency in looking at what it does to a mindset of a people.
Yeah.
When you believe you are God's chosen people. And if God loves all life, all creation, all people, what it does to the mindset of a person who believes that they're chosen over everybody else. And I don't think that's positive, right? So being honest, being transparent like I'm being right now, I'm saying that I think that there are certain things in the religious aspect that if we really stop and look at it, and look at if our children were in the situation of the recipients of some of these things we see, if we're being transparent, some of these things lead to things that are not very favorable and are not good.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's an important question to ask. Again, you and I talk about this all the time. What am I becoming? And everything that I believe, every thought that I consider, every thought that I have, whatever, what are you becoming in that? What does the end result look like? And I think that's again, we can have a whole other session on that. I'm not going to draw the ire of our audience with that, but that's very important.
No, I think that I really appreciate you for bringing that up, because I think that that's the whole idea of truly implementing,
Sure,
and not being hypocrite.
absolutely.
I think the key of
Absolutely.
this broadcast and this channel is for us to be open and for us to discuss things that are
Sure.
at times uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Transparency is not really a comfortable thing.
It's not.
Like you said, it's an exposure.
Right.
But the thing, and it's not like
It's freeing too, though.
Huh?
It's freeing too.
It is a like I said, it's a phenomenon. It's like the word love. I keep bringing it up, and that's not a word that I want to approach here, because I think that we have to build a segue.
Yes.
A pathway
Agreed.
to love and fear.
Agreed.
Those two words are too big, and it's going to take more than 30 minutes to discuss those things, right?
A lot of groundwork has to be laid first.
A lot of groundwork,
Yeah.
because many of us, once again, we say it audibly out of our mouth, but spiritually and mentally,
Far from it.
there is something else going on in our psyche. And I really believe that, I really believe that God, our Heavenly Father, our Creator, is dealing with us with these things.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And very so much so that these words right here, to me, and I'm gonna say this, and anybody online can disagree with me. I really believe that words at its raw state, we are barbaric. You know what I'm saying? You know why?
Why?
Because we can be hacked. That's the whole idea. And that's the reason why I'm trying.
How do you mean we could be hacked?
So,
Explain.
Like for instance,
You and I talked about it. I want to make sure the audience.
okay, all right. So,
Right.
so what I mean is, what we were talking about earlier is if I take a word and and if I'm misinformed about
Yes.
that word,
Yes.
then my actions are not going to look like what the definition truly is. You see what I'm saying?
Agreed.
So when it's no different than love. If you're thinking love is love at first sight, oh my good. No, that sounds like infatuation to me.
Right, right.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, and I just use that as an example.
For sure.
And we can go down that discussion. To me, I think we have to be very careful that we arm our minds and seek maturity.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
For sure.
And every word that's received, challenge it.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. If you're not the reason why McAfee and Norton antivirus works is because that's a filter for all the nonsense that could. Well, who knows, man?
Who knows what they're doing? Right.
What do they do?
Right. Not being transparent.
And not being transparent
That's
with their
right.
work.
That's
Yeah,
right.
pay $30 a month for this, and we'll protect your.
Protecting nothing. Giving all our information away, selling our data. Anyway,
Yeah, but that's what I love.
That's deep.
Yeah, but that's kind of what we mean about, like, from a barbaric standpoint, people, that words we can be hacked if we're misinformed and not guided properly.
When you're given, it's just like you said, you're given the wrong definition of a word. When you're, let me stop. Okay. Yep, you got it. Yep, we could be hacked in terms of giving the wrong definition of a word, and we carry out something different. So,
man, and I kind of know where you're headed.
Yes, you do.
It's deep, you guys, we value this format. We really do. We believe it's very important, and we believe that we all can grow together.
Absolutely.
The more we can, as humans, as these walking bodies with souls, right? We are a powerful,
the meat suit.
right? We're powerful people, and we have to really get to a higher level. I really believe we can, but I think that we have to be honest with ourselves, recognize, and admit if you don't know. That's another thing, is admitting when we don't know. So I think I'm done with what I have to say.
Words are powerful. That's why they count, right?
Yeah.
And it's just recognizing the power and the effectiveness of words and what they accomplish is important, and that's why we're doing this podcast. So,
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Right.
signing out. Please like,
Peace.
share, and subscribe.
And comments. Interact with us in the comments. Yep.
Please do, because the more you comment, the more it gets us to think, and we can give feedback, and
Sure.
honest feedback. All right.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. God bless you.